74. Hazel. Hazel's internal compass spun wildly. She remembered when she had been small in New Orleans in the late 1930s. Her mother had taken her to the dentist to get a bad tooth pulled. It was the first and only dentist to get a bad tooth pulled. It was the first and only time It was the first and only time Hazel had ever received either. The dentist promised it would make her sleepy and relaxed, but Hazel felt like she was floating away with her own body, panicky and out of control. Whether the ether wore off, she'd been sick for 3 days. This felt like a massive dose of either. Part of her knew she was still in the cavern. Face stood only a few feet in front of them. Slightest waited silently at the doors of death, but layers of mist enfolded Hazel, twisting her sense of reality. She took one step forward and bumped into a wall. That shouldn't have been there. Leo pressed his hands against the stone. Where the heck? What the heck? Where are we? A corridor stretched out to their left and right. Torches gutting it in iron scones. The air smelled of mildew, as in an old tomb. On Hazel's shoulder, Gale barked angrily, digging her claws into Hazel's collarbone. Yes, I know, Hazel muttered to the weasel. It's an illusion. Leo pounded on the wall. Pretty solid illusion. Percy laughed. Her voice sounded watery and far away. It is an illusion, Hazel Leverskew. Or something more. Don't you see what I have created? Hazel felt so off balance. She could barely stand, much less think straight. She tried to extend her senses to see through the mist and find the cabin again, but all she felt were tunnels splitting off in a dozen directions, going everywhere except forward. Random thoughts glinted in her mind like golden nuggets coming to the surface. Daedalus, the minotaur locked away, died slowly in my new domain. The labyrinth, Hazel said. She's remaking the labyrinth. What now? Leo had been tapping the wall with a ball peen hammer, but he turned and frowned at her. I saw the labyrinth collapse during that battle at Camp Half-Blood. Hazel was connected to Daedalus's life force or something, and then he died. Percy's voice clucked disapprovingly. Ah, but I am still alive. You credit Daedalus with all the maze's secrets. I breathed magical life into his labyrinth. Daedalus was nothing compared to me. The immortal sorceress, daughter of Helios, sister of Sis. Now the labyrinth will be my domain. It's an illusion, Hazel insisted. We have to break through it. Even as she said it, the warmth seemed to grow more solid. The smell of mildew more intense. Too late, Percy crooned. The maze is already awake. It will spread under the skin of the earth once more while your water world is leveled. You demigods, you heroes will wander its corridors, dying slowly of thirst and fear or misery, and fear and misery, or perhaps if I am feeling merciful, you will die quickly in great pain. Holes opened in the floor beneath Hazel's feet. She grabbed Leo and pushed him aside as a row of spikes shot upward, impaling the ceiling. Run! She yelled. Percy's laughter echoed down the corridor. Where are you going, young sorceress? You're running from an illusion? Hazel didn't answer. She was too busy trying to stay alive. Behind them, row after row of spikes shot towards the ceiling, with a persistent thunk, thunk, thunk. She pulled Leo down a side corridor, leapt over a tripwire, then stumbled to a halt in front of a pit 20 feet across. How deep is that? Leo gasped for breath. His trouser leg was ripped where one of the spikes had grazed him. Hazel's sensor told her that the pit was at least 50 feet straight down, with a pool of poison at the bottom. Could she trust her senses? Whether or not Pasiphae had created a new labyrinth, Hazel believed they were still in the same cavern, being made to run aimlessly back and forth while Pasiphae and Slytius watched in amusement. Illusion or not, Hazel could figure out how to get out of this maze. The traps would kill them. 8 minutes now, said the voice of Pasiphae. I'd love to see you survive truly. That would prove your worthiness. Sacrifices to Gaia in Athens. But then, of course, we wouldn't need your friends in the elevator. Hazel's heart pounded. She faced the wall to her left. Despite what her senses told her, that should be the direction of the doors. Pasiphae should be right in front of her. Hazel wanted to burst through the wall and throttle the sorceress. In 8 minutes, she and Leo needed to be at the doors of death to let their friends out. But Pasiphae was an immortal sorceress with thousands of years of experience in weaving spells. Hazel couldn't defeat her through sheer willpower. She'd managed to fool the bandit Syrian by showing him what he expected to see. Hazel needed to figure out what Pasiphae wanted most. 7 minutes now, Pasiphae lamented. If only we had more time. So the indigentites. I'd like you to suffer. So many indigentites. I'd love you to suffer. That was it, Hazel realized. She had to run the gauntlet. She had to make the maze more dangerous, more spectacular. Make Pasiphae focus on the traps rather than the direction. The labyrinth was leading. Leo, we're going to jump, Hazel said. But it's not as far as it looks. Go! She grabbed his hand and then launched himself across the pit. When they landed, Hazel looked back and saw no pit at all, just a 3-inch crack in the floor. Come on, she urged. They ran as the voice of Pasiphae droned on. Oh dear, no, you'll never survive that way. 6 minutes. The ceiling above them cracked apart. Gale the weasel squeaked in alarm, but Hazel imagined a new tunnel leading off to the left. A tunnel even more dangerous, going in the wrong direction. The mist softened under her will. The tunnel appeared and they dashed to one side. Pasiphae sighed with disappointment. You really aren't very good at this, my dear. But Hazel felt a spark of hope. She'd created a tunnel. She'd driven a small wedge into the magic fabric of the labyrinth. The floor collapsed under them. Hazel jumped to another side, dragging Leo with her. She imagined another tunnel veering back the way they came, but full of poisonous gas. The maze obliged. Leo, hold your breath, she warned. They plunged through the toxic fog. Hazel's eyes felt like they were being rinsed into pepper juice. But she kept running. 5 minutes, Pasiphae said. Alas, if only I could watch you suffer longer. They burst into a corridor with fresh air. Leo coughed. If only she would shut up. They ducked under a bronze garrote wire. Hazel imagined the tunnel curving back towards Pasiphae, even so slightly. The mist bent to her will. The walls of the tunnel began to close on either side. Hazel didn't try to stop them. She made them close faster. Shaking the floor and cracking the ceiling, she and Leo ran for their lives, following the curve as it brought them closer to what she hoped was the centre of the room. A pity, said Pasiphae. I wish I could kill you and your friends in the elevator, but Gaia has insisted the two of you must be kept alive until the face of hope, when your blood will be put to good use. Well, I will have to find another victim. I will have to find other victims for my labour. You two have been second-rate failures. Hazel and Leo stumbled to a stop. In front of them stretched a chasm so wide Leo couldn't see the other side. From somewhere below in the darkness came the sound of hissing. Thousands and thousands of snakes. Hazel was tempted to retreat, but the tunnel was closing behind them, leaving them stranded on a tiny ledge. Gale the Weasel paced across Hazel's shoulder and farted with anxiety. Okay, Leo muttered. The walls are moving parts. They gotta be mechanical. Give me a second. No, Leo, Hazel said. There's no way back. But hold my hand, she said. On 3. But 3? What? But 3. What? Hazel leaped in the pit, pulling Leo with her. She tried to ignore his screaming and the flatulent weasel clinging to her neck. She bent all her will into redirecting the magic of labyrinth. Percy laughed with delight, knowing that any moment they would be crushed or bitten to death in a pit of snakes. Instead, Hazel imagined a chute in the darkness just to their left. She twisted in midair and fell towards it. She and Leo hit the chute hard and slid into the cavern, landing right on top of Pasiphae. Ack! The sorceress's head smacked against the floor as Leo sat down hard on her chest. For a moment, the three of them and the weasel were a pile of sprawling bodies and failing limbs. Hazel tried to draw her sword, but Pasiphae managed to extract herself first. The sorceress backed away, her hairdo bent sideways and collapsed like a collapsed cake. Her dress was smeared with grease stains from Leo's tool belt. You miserable wretches, she howled. The maze was gone. A few feet away, Clytius stood with his back to them, watching the doors of death. By Hazel's calculation, they had about 30 seconds until their friends arrived. Hazel felt exhausted from her run through the maze while controlling mist, but she needed to pull off one more trick. She had successfully made Pasiphae see what she most desired. Now Hazel had to make the sorceress see what she most feared. You must really hate demigods, Hazel said, trying to take the mimic. Pasiphae's cruel smile. We always get the better of you, don't we, Pasiphae? Nonsense! Screamed Pasiphae. I will tear you apart. We'll always put the rug out from under your feet. Hazel synthesized. Your husband betrayed you. Theseus killed the Minotaur and stole your daughter, Ariander. 2 second-rate failures have turned your own maze against you, but you knew it would come to this, didn't you? You always fall in the end. I am immortal, Pasiphae wailed. She took a step back, fingering her necklace. You cannot stand against me. You cannot stand at all. Hazel counted. Look. She pointed at the feet of the sorceress. A trapdoor opened. Underneath Pasiphae, she fell screaming into a bottomless pit that didn't really exist. The floor solidified. The sorceress gone. Leo stared at Hazel in amazement. How did you? Just then the elevator dinged. Rather than pushing the up button, Clytius stepped back from the controls, keeping their friends trapped inside. Leo! Hazel yelled. They were 30 feet away, much too far to reach the elevator, but Leo pulled out a screwdriver and chucked it like a thrown knife. An impossible shot. The screwdriver spun straight past Clytius and slammed into the up button. The doors of death opened with a hiss. Black smoke billowed out, and 2 bodies spilled face first onto the floor. Percy and Annabeth limp as a corpse. Hazel sobbed. Oh, gods! She and Leo started forward, but Clytius raised his hand in an unmistakable gesture. Stop! He lifted his massive reptilian foot over Percy's head. The giant smoky shroud poured over the floor, covering Annabeth and Percy in a pool of dark fog. Slightest, you've lost, Hazel snarled. Let them go, or you'll end up like Pasiphae. The giant tilted his head. His diamond eyes gleamed at his feet. Annabeth lurched like she'd hit a power line. She rolled on her back, black smoking coiling from her mouth. I am not Pasiphae. Annabeth spoke in a voice that wasn't hers. The words as deep as a bass guitar. You have won nothing. Stop that. Even from 30 feet away, Hazel could sense Annabeth's life force waning, her pulse becoming thready. Whatever Slightest was doing, putting words from her mouth, it was killing her. Slightest nudged Percy's head with his foot. Percy's face lolled to one side. Not quite dead. The giant's words boomed from Percy's mouth. A terrible shock to the mortal body. I would imagine coming back from the towers, they'll be out for a while. He turned his attention back to Annabeth. More smoke poured from between her lips. I'll tie them up and take them to Phoriaphon in Athens. Just the sacrifice we need. Unfortunately, that means I have no further use for you two. Oh yeah, Leo growled. Well, maybe you got the smoke, buddy, but I've got the fire. His hands blazed. He shot white hot columns of flame at the giant, but the slightest smoky aura absorbed them on impact. Tendrils of black haze travelled back up the lines of fire, snuffing out the light and heat, covering Leo in darkness. Leo fell to his knees, clutching at his throat. No! Hazel ran towards him, but Gale chattered urgently on his shoulder, a clear warning. I would not, Slightest's voice reverberated from Leo's mouth. You do not understand, Hazel Levesque. I devour magic. I destroy the voice and the soul. You cannot oppose me. Black fog spread further across the room, covering Annabeth and Percy, blowing towards Hazel. Blood roared in Hazel's ears. She had to act, but how? If the black smoke could impact Leo so quickly, what chance did he have? Fire, she stammered in a small voice. You're supposed to be weak against it. Giant chuckled, using Annabeth's vocal cords. This time, you were counting on that, eh? It is true, I do not like fire, but Leo Voldic's flame are not strong enough to trouble me. Somewhere behind Hazel, a soft lyrical voice said, What about my flames, old friend? Gale squeaked excitedly and jumped off from Hazel's shoulder, scampering to the entrance of the cabin where a blonde woman stood in a black dress, the mist swirling around her. The giant stumbled backwards, bumping into the doors. You, he said from Percy's mouth. Me, Hecate agreed. She spread her arms. Blazing torches appeared in her hands. It had millennia since it has been a millennia since I fought at the side of a demigod. But Hazel Levesque had proven herself worthy. What do you say, Slightest? Shall we play with fire? Let me see. Time. Okay. Chapter 75. Hazel. If the giant had run away screaming, Hazel would have been grateful. Then they all could have taken the rest of the day off. Slightest disappointed her. When he saw the goddess's torches blazing, the giant seemed to recover his wits. He stomped his foot, shaking the floor, almost stepping on Annabeth's arm. Dark smoke billowed around him until Annabeth and Percy were totally hidden. Hazel could see nothing but the giant's gleaming eyes. Bold words. Slightest spoke from the air's voice. You forget, goddess, where we last met. You had the help of Hercules and Dionysius, the most powerful heroes in the world, destined and destined to be gods, to become gods. Now you bring these. Leo's unconscious body contorted in pain. Stop it! Hazel yelled. She didn't plan what happened next. She simply knew she had to protect her friends. She imagined them behind her, the same way she'd imagined new tunnels appearing in Pasiphae's labyrinth. Leo dissolved. He reappeared at Hazel's feet, along with Percy and Annabeth. The mist whirled around her, spinning over the stones and enveloping her friends, where the white mists met the dark smoke of Slightest. It steamed and sizzled like lava rolling in the sea. Leo opened his eyes and gasped. What? Annabeth and Percy remained motionless. But Hazel could sense their heartbeats getting stronger, their breath coming more evenly. On Hecate's shoulders, Gale the polecat barked with admiration. The god stepped forward, her dark eyes glittering in the torchlight. "You're right, Slytius. Hazel Levesque is not Hercules or Dionysus, but I think you will find her just as formidable." Through the smoky shroud, Hazel saw a giant open his mouth. No words came out. Slytius sneered in frustration. You tried to sit up. "What's going on? What can I watch Percy and Annabeth?" Hazel drew her spather. "Stay behind me. Stay in the mist." But the look Hazel gave him must have been more severe than she realized. Leo gumped. "Yeah, got it. White mist, good. Black smoke, bad." Yeah. White mist, good. Black smoke, bad. Hazel advanced. The giant spread his arms. The dome ceiling shook, and the giant's voice echoed through the room, magnified 100 times. "Formidable!" the giant demanded. It sounded as if he was speaking through a chorus of the dead, leading all the unfortunate souls who'd been buried behind the dome's stela. "Because the girl has learned your magic tricks, Hecate. Because you allow these weaklings to hide in your mist." A sword appeared in the giant's hand, a Stygian iron blade, much like Leo's, except 5 times the size. "I do not understand why Gaia would find any of these demigods worthy of sacrifice. I'll crush them like empty nut balls." Hazel's fear turned to rage. She screamed, the walls of the chamber making a crackling sound like an ice in a warm water. And dozens of them streaked towards the giant, punching through his armor like a buck shocked. Slytius staggered backwards, his disembodied voice bellowed with pain. His iron breastplate was peppered with holes. Golden ink had trickled from a wound on his right arm. His shroud of darkness thinned. Hazel could see the murderous expression on his face. "You, Slytius growled. You worthless." "Worthless?" Hecate asked quietly. "I'd say Hazel Levesque knows a few tricks you and I cannot teach her." Hazel stood in front of her friends, determined to protect them, but her energy was fading. Her sword was already heavy in her hand, and she hadn't even swung it yet. She wished Arian were here. She could use the horse's speed and strength. Unfortunately, the equine friend would not be able to help her this time. He was a creature of the wide open spaces, not the underground. The giant dug his fingers into the wound on his biceps. He pulled out a diamond and flicked to the side. The wound closed. "So, daughter of Pluto," Slytius rumbled, "do you really believe Hecate has your interests here?" Circa was a favourite of hers, and Medea, and Pasiphae. How did they end up, eh? Behind her, Percy heard Annabeth stirring, groaning in pain. Percy muttered something that sounded like Bob. Slytius stepped forward, holding his sword casually at his side, as if they were comrades rather than enemies. "Hecate will not tell you the truth. She sends acolytes like you to do her bidding and take all the risk. If by some miracle you incapacitate me, only then will be able to set me on fire. Then she will claim the glory of the kill. You heard how Bacchus dealt with our Allodae twins in the Colosseum. Hecate is worse. She's a titan who betrayed the titans. Then she betrayed the gods. Do you really think she will keep faith with you?" Hecate's face was unreadable. "I cannot answer this accusation, Hazel," said the goddess. This is your crossroads. You must choose." "Yes, crossroads," the giant's laughter echoed. His wounds seemed to have healed completely. "Hecate offers you obscurity choices. Vorcourses of magic, and I am the anti-Hecate. Sorry, excuse me. I will give you truth. I will eliminate choices and magic. I will strip away the mist once and for all and show the world in all its true horror. Leo struggled to his feet, coughing like asthmatic. I'm loving this guy, he breathed. Seriously, we should keep him around for inspirational seminars. His hands ignited like blowtorches, or I could just light him up. Leo, no! Hazel said. My father's temple, my call. Yeah, okay, but Hazel! Hazel! Annabeth wheezed. Hazel was so elated to hear her friend's voice that she almost turned, but she knew she couldn't take her eyes off Slytius. The chains, Annabeth managed. Hazel inhaled sharply. She'd been a fool. The doors of death were still open, shuddering against the chains that held them in place. Hazel had to cut them free so they would disappear and finally be beyond Gaia's reach. The only problem is a big smoky giant stood in her way. You can't seriously believe you have the strength, Slytius chided. What will you do, Hazel Nevsky? Pelt me with more rubies? Shower me with sapphires? Hazel gave him an answer. She raised her spatter and charged. Apparently Slytius hadn't expected her to be quite so suicidal. His use was slow, raising his sword by the time he slashed Hazel. But by the time he slashed, Hazel ducked between his legs and jabbed her imperial gold blade into his gluteus maximus. Not very ladylike. The nuns at St. Agnes would never have approved. But it worked. Slytius roared and arched back, waddling away from her. Mist still swirling around Hazel, hissing as it met the giant's black smoke. Hazel realized that Hecate was assisting her, lending her the strength to keep up a defensive shroud. Hazel also knew that the instant her own concentration wavered and that darkness touched her, she would collapse. If that happened, she wasn't sure Hecate would be able or willing to stop the giant from crushing her and her friends. Hazel sprinted towards the doors of death. Her blade shattered the chains on the left side like they were made of ice. She lunged to the right, but Slytius yelled, "No!" By sheer luck, she was cut in half. The flat of the giant's blade caught her in the chest and sent her flying. She slammed into the wall and felt bones cracked. Across the room, Leah screamed her name. Through her blurry vision, she saw a flash of fire. Hecate stood nearby, her form shimmering as if she were about to dissolve. Her torches seemed to be flickering out, but it might just have been that Hazel was starting to lose consciousness. She couldn't give up now. She forced herself to stand. Her side felt like it was embedded with razor blades. Her sword lay on the ground about 50 feet away. She staggered towards it. "Slytius!" she shouted. She meant it to sound like a brave challenge, but it came out as more of a creak, or a croak. At least it got his attention. The giant turned from Lee and the others. When he saw limping forward, he laughed. "A good try, Hazel Leverskew," Slytius admitted. "You did better than I anticipated, but magic alone cannot defeat me, and you do not have sufficient strength. Hecate has failed you, and she fails all her followers in the end." The mist around her was thinning. At the other end of the room, Leo tried to force feed Percy some ambrosia, though Percy was still pretty much out of it. Annabeth was awake but struggling, but barely able to lift her head. Hecate stood with her torches, watching and waiting with infuriated Hazel so much she found one last burst of energy. She threw her sword, not at the giant but at the doors of death. The chains on the right side shattered. Hazel collapsed in agony, her side burning as the doors shuttered and dissipated in a flash of purple light. Slytius roared so loudly that a half dozen stellae fell from the ceiling and shattered. "That was for my brother Nico! Hazel gasped. "And for destroying my father's altar. You have forfeited your right to a quick death. The giant said, I will suffocate you in darkness, slowly, painfully. Hecate cannot help you. No one can help you. The goddess raised her torches. I will not be so certain, Slytius. Hazel's friends simply need a little time to reach her. Time you have given them with boasting bragging. Slytius snorted. What friends? These weaklings? They are no challenge. In front of Hazel, the air rippled, the mist thickened, creating a doorway, and 4 people stepped through. Hazel wept with relief. Frank's arm was bleeding and bandaged, but he was alive. Next to him stood Nico, Piper, and Jason, all with their swords drawn. Sorry we're late, Jason said. Is this the guy who needs killing? Ooh, I think we might finish off the book. Oh, this might be good. Chapter 76. Hazel. And only 22 pages left to go. Do we finish the book? 28 actually. Chapter 7. I'm going to have it in, okay? Chapter 76. Hazel. Hazel always felt sorry for Slytius. They attacked him from every direction. Leo shooting a fire at his legs. Frank and Piper jabbing at his chest. Jason flying into the air and kicking him in the face. Hazel was proud to see how well Piper remembered her sword fighting lessons. Each time the giant smoky veal started creeping around one of them, Nico was there slashing through it, drinking the darkness with his strident blade. Percy and Annabeth were on their feet looking weak, but their swords were drawn. When did Annabeth get a sword? And what was it made of? Ivory? They looked like they wanted to help, but there was no need. The giant was surrounded. Slytius turned back and forth as if she decided which of them to kill first. Wait, hold still, no, ouch! Wait, hold still, no, ouch! The darkness around him dispelled completely, leaving nothing to protect him except the battered armor. Inch or oozed from a dozen wounds. The damage healed almost as fast as it was inflicted, but Hazel could tell the giant was tiring. One last time, Jason flew at him, kicking him in the chest, and the giant's breastplate shattered. Slytius staggered backwards, his sword dropped to his floor. He fell to his knees, and the demigods encircled him. Only then did Hecate step forward, her torch's rays mist curled around the giant hissing and bubbling as it touched his skin. And so it ends, Hecate said. It does not end, Slytius' voice echoed from somewhere above, muffled and slurred. My breath has risen, gale wakes, only for the blood of Olympus. It took all of you together to defeat me. What will you do when the Earth Mother opens her eyes? Hecate turned her torches upside down. She thrust them like daggers at Slytius' head. The giant's hair wept up faster than Drighton, spraying down his head and across his body until the heat of the bonfire made Hazel wince. Slytius fell without a sound, face first into the rubble of Hades' altar. His body crumbled to ashes. For a moment no one spoke. Hazel heard a ragged, painful noise and realized it was her own breathing. Her side felt like it had been kicked in with a battering ram. The goddess Hecate faced her. You should go now, Hazel Levesque. Lead your friends out of this place. Hazel gritted her teeth, trying to hold her in anger. Just like that. No. Just like that. No. Thank you. No. Good work. The goddess tilted her head. Gale the weasel chittered. Maybe a goodbye, maybe a warning, and disappeared in the folds of her mistress' skirts. You look in the wrong place for gratitude, Hecate said. As for good work, that remains to be seen. Speed your way to Athens. Slytius was wrong. The giants have risen, all of them stronger than ever. Gale is on the very edge of waking. The feast of hope will poorly named unless you arrive to stop her. The chamber rumbled. Another stela crashed to the floor and shattered. The house of Hades is unstable, Hecate said. Leave now. We shall meet again. The goddess dissolved. The mist evaporated. She's friendly, Percy grumbled. The others turned towards him and Annabeth as if just realizing they were here. Dude, Jason! Jason gave Percy a bear hug. Back from Tartarus, Leo whooped. That's my peeps. That's my peeps. That's my peeps. Piper threw her arms around Annabeth and cried. Frank ran to Hazel and he gently folded her arms around her. You're hurt, he said. Ribs probably broken, she admitted. But Frank, what's happened to your arm? He managed a long smile. Long story, we're alive. That's what matters. She was so giddy with relief. It took her a moment to notice Nico standing by him, his expression full of pain and conflict. Hey, she called to him, beckoning with her good arm. He hesitated, then came over and kissed his forehead. I'm glad you're okay, he said. The ghosts were right. Only one of us made it to the doors of death. You would have made Dad proud. She smiled, cupping her hand gently to his face. We couldn't have defeated Slytius without you. She brushed her thumb under Nico's eye and wondered if he had been crying. She wanted so badly to understand what was going on with him. What had happened to him over the last few weeks? After all, they'd just been through. Hazel was more grateful than ever to have a brother. More grateful than ever to have a brother. Before she could say that, the ceiling shattered. Cracks appeared in the remaining tiles. Columns of dust spilled down. No. We've got to get out of here, Jason said. Frank shook his head. I think one favour from the dead is all I can manage today. Wait, what? Hazel asked. Piper raised her eyebrows. Your unbelievable boyfriend called in a favour as a child of Mars. He summoned the spirits of some dead warriors, made them lead us here. Well, I'm not sure actually. The passages of the dead. All I know is that it was very, very dark. To the left, a section of the wall split. 2 ruby eyes from a carved stone skeleton popped out and rolled across the floor. We'll have to shadow travel, Hazel said. Michael winced. Hazel, I can barely manage that with only myself. With 7 more people, I'll help you. She tried to sound confident. She'd never shadow travelled before. She had no idea if she could, but after working with the mist, altering the labyrinth, she had to believe it was possible. An entire section of tiles peeled loose from the ceiling. Everyone, grab hands, Leo said. They made a hasty circle. Hazel envisioned the Greek countryside above them. The cavern collapsed, and she felt herself dissolving into shadow. They appeared on the hillside overlooking the river Acheron. The sun was just rising, making the water glitter and the clouds glow orange. The cool morning air smelled of honeysuckle. Hazel was holding hands with Frank on her left, Nico on her right. They were all alive and mostly whole. The sunlight in the trees was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. She wanted to live in that moment, free of monsters and gods and evil spirits. Then her friends began to stir. Nico realized that he was holding Percy's hands and quickly let go. Leo staggered backwards. I think I'll sit down. He collapsed. The others joined. Iago, too, still floated over the river a few hundred yards away. Hazel knew that they should signal Coach Hedge and tell him that they were alive and they had been in the temple all night, or several nights. But at the moment the group was too tired to do anything except sit and relax and marvel at the fact that they were okay. They began to exchange stories. Frank explained what had happened with the ghostly legion and the army of monsters, and Nico had used the scepter of Dioclety and how bravely Jason and Piper had fought. Frank is being modest, Jason said. He controlled the entire legion. You should have seen him. Oh, by the way, Jason glanced at Percy. I resigned my office, gave Frank a field promotion to a praetor, unless you want to contest that ruling. Percy grinned. No argument here. Praetor? Praetor? Hazel stared at Frank. He shrugged uncomfortably. Well, yeah, I know it seemed weird. She tried to throw her arms around him, then winced as he remembered her busted ribs. She said before kissing him, "It seemed perfect." He clapped Frank on the shoulder. "Way to go, Zhang! Now you can order Octavian to fall on his sword." Tempting, Frank agreed. He turned apprehensively to Percy. "But you guys, Tataris, Tataris has to be your real story. What happened down there? How did you?" Percy laced his fingers through Annabeth's. Hazel happened to glance at Nika and saw pain in his eyes. He wasn't sure, but maybe he was thinking how lucky Percy and Annabeth were to have each other. Nika had gone through Tataris alone. "We'll tell you the story," Percy promised, "but not yet. Okay? I'm not ready to remember that place." "No," Annabeth agreed. "Right now." She gazed towards the river and faltered. I think a ride is coming." Hazel turned. Iago 2 veered to port, its aerial oars in motion, its sail catching the wind. Festus's head glinted in sunlight, even from a distance. Hazel could hear him creaking and clanking in jubilation. "That's my boy! That's my boy!" Leo yelled. As the ship got closer, Hazel saw the coach hedge standing at the prow. "About time!" the coach yelled down. He was doing his best to scowl, but his eyes gleamed as if maybe, just maybe, he was happy to see them. "What took you so long, Cupcakes? You kept your visitors waiting." "Visitors?" Hazel murmured. At the rail next to the coach, a dark-haired girl appeared wearing a purple cloak, her face so covered with soot and bloody scratches that Hazel almost didn't recognize her. Rena had arrived. Chapter 77, the semi-final chapter of the book. Chapter 77, Percy. Percy stared at the Athena Parthenos, waiting for it to strike him down. Leah's new mechanical hoist system had lowered the statue onto the hillside with surprising ease. Now the 40-foot-tall goddess gazed serenely over the river Acheron, her gold dress like molten metal in the sun. "Incredible," Rena admitted. She was still red-eyed from crying. Soon after she'd landed on the Argo 2, her Pegasus Sisypheo had collapsed, overwhelmed by poison claw marks from Marks from a Gryphon attack the night before. Rena had put the horse out of misery with a golden knife, turning the Pegasus into dust that scattered in the sweet-smelling Greek air. Maybe not a bad end for a flying horse, but Rena had lost a loyal friend. Percy figured that she'd given up too much in her life already. The Praetor circled the Athena Parthenos warily. "It looks newly made." "Yeah," Leo said. "We brushed off the cobwebs. Used a little Windex. It wasn't hard." The Argo 2 hovered just overhead, with Festus keeping watch for threats on the radar. The entire crew had decided to eat lunch on the hillside while they discussed what to do. After the last few weeks, Percy figured they earned a good meal together. Really anything that wasn't fire, water, or Draken meat soup. Hey Rena, Annabeth called. "Have some food. Join us." The Praetor glanced over, her dark eyebrows furrowed as if join us didn't quite compute. Percy had never seen Rena with her armor before. It was on board the ship, being repaired before the Wonder Table. She wore a pair of jeans and a purple Camp Jupiter t-shirt, and looked almost like a normal teenager except for the knife at her belt and that guarded expression like she was ready for an attack from any direction. "All right," she said finally. They scooted over to make room for her in the circle. She sat cross-legged next to Annabeth, picked up a cheese sandwich and nibbled at the edge. "So," Rena said, "Frank Zhang, Praetor." Frank shifted, wiping crumbs on his chin. "Well, yeah, field promotion. to lead a different legion. To lead a different legion, Rena noted. A legion of ghosts. Hazel put her arm protectively through Frank's. After so hour in sick bay, they both looked a lot better, but Percy could tell they weren't. What to think about their old boss from Camp Jupiter dropping in for lunch? Hey, Drina, Jason said. You should have seen him. He was amazing, Percy Piper agreed. Frank is a leader, Hazel insisted. He makes a great traitor. Rena's eyes stayed on Frank, like she was trying to guess his weight. I believe you, she said. I approve. Frank blinked. You do? Rena smiled dryly. A son of Mars, the hero who helped bring back the Eagle of the Legion. I can work with a demigod like that. I'm just wondering how to convince the 12th Fulminator. I'm just wondering how to convince the 12th Fulminator. I'm just wondering how to convince the 12th Fulminator. Frank scowled. Yeah, I've been wondering the same thing. Percy still couldn't get over how much Frank had changed. A growth spurt was putting it mildly. He was at least 3 inches taller, less pudgy, and more bulky, like a line baker. A line baker, not lime baker. A line baker. L-I-N-E. Line baker, not lime. Line baker. He was at least 3 inches tall, less pudgy, and more bulky, like a line. A line. Line, not lime. Line. Like a line baker. His face looked studied, his jawline more rugged. It was as if Frank had turned into a bull and then back to a human. But he kept some of the bullishness. The Legion will listen to you, Rena, Frank said. You made it here alone across the ancient lands. Rena chewed her sandwich as if it were cardboard. In doing so, I broke the laws of the Legion. Caesar broke the law when he crossed the Rubicon. Frank said. Great leaders have to think outside the box sometimes. She shook her head. I'm not Caesar. After finding Jason's note in Diocletian's palace, tracking you down was easy. I only did what I thought was necessary. Percy could help smiling. Rena, you're too modest. Flying halfway across the world by yourself to answer Annabeth's plea. Because you knew it was our best chance for peace. That's pretty freaking heroic. Rena shrugged. Says the demigod who fell into Tartarus, and found his way back. He had help, Annabeth said. Oh, obviously, Rena said. Well, I doubt Percy could find his way out of Percy could find his way. Oh, obviously, Percy. Without you, I doubt Percy could find his way out of a paper bag. True, Annabeth agreed. Hey! Percy complained. The others started laughing, but Percy didn't mind. It felt good to see them smile. Heck, just being in the water world felt good. Breathing up poison air, enjoying actual sunshine back on his back. Suddenly he thought of Bob. Tell the sun and stars hello from me. Percy's smile melted. Bob and Damison had sacrificed their lives so that Percy and Annabeth could sit here now, enjoying the sunlight and laughing with their friends. It wasn't fair. Leo pulled a screwdriver from his belt. He stabbed a chocolate-covered strawberry and passed it to Coach Hedge. Then he pulled out a screwdriver and spared a second strawberry for himself. So the 20 million peso question, Leo said. We got this slightly used 40-foot tall statue of Athena. What do we do with it? Rena squinted at the Athena Parthenos. As fine as it is to look from this hill, I didn't come all this way to admire it. According to Annabeth, it must be returned to Camp Half-Blood by a Roman leader. Do I understand correctly? Annabeth nodded. I had a dream down in, Tartarus. I was on Half-Blood Hill, and Athena's voice said, I must stand here. The Romans must bring me. Percy studied the statue uneasily. He never had the best relationships with Annabeth's mum. He kept expecting Bib Mama's statue to come alive and chew him out for getting her daughter into so much trouble, maybe just step on him without a word. It makes sense, Nico said. Percy flinched. It almost sounded like Nico had read his mind and was agreed that the Athena should step on him. That would sound pretty stupid. The son of Hades sat at the other end of the circle, eating nothing but half a pomegranate, the fruit of the underworld. Percy wondered if that was Nico's idea of a joke. The statue was a powerful symbol, Nico said. A Roman returning it to the Greeks, that could heal the historic rift. Maybe even heal the gods of their split personalities. Coach Hedge swallowed his strawberry along with half the screwdriver. Now hold on. I like this piece as much as the next satire. You hate peace, Leo said. Point his Rolodex. We were only, a few days from Athens. We've got an army of giants waiting for us there. We went to all the trouble of saving the statue. I went to most of the trouble, Annabeth reminded him, because prophecy called it the giant's bane. The coach continued. So why aren't we taking it to Athens with us? It's obviously a secret weapon. He eyed the Parthenos. It looks like a ballistic missile to me. Maybe if Voldic strapped some engines to it. Barbara cleared her throat. Great idea, Coach. But a lot of us had dreams and visions of Gaia rising at Camp Half-Blood. She unsheathed her dagger and Catopatrice and set it on her plate. At the moment, the blade showed nothing except the sky. But looking at it still made Percy feel uncomfortable. Since we got back to the ship, Piper said, I've been seeing some bad stuff in the ice. The Roman legion is almost within striking distance of Camp Half-Blood. They're gathering reinforcements, spirits, eagles, wolves. Octavian, Rhianna growled. I told him to wait. When we take over command, Francis, our first order of business, we should be to load Octavian from the nearest catapult and fire him as far away as possible. Agreed, Rhianna said. But for now, he's intent on war, Annabeth put in. He'll have it unless we stop him. Piper turned the blade of her knife. Unfortunately, that's not the worst of it. I saw images of a possible future. The camp in flames, Roman and Greek demigods lying dead, and Gaia. Her voice failed. Percy remembered the god of Tartarus in physical form, looming over him. He never felt such helpless and terror. He still burned with shame, remembering how his sword had slipped out of his hand. You might as well try and kill the earth, Tartarus had said. If Gaia was that powerful, and she had an army of giants at her side. Percy didn't see how 7 demigods could stop her, especially when I found it. Especially when most of the gods were incapacitated. They had to stop the giants before Gaia woke, or it was game over. Game over. Is the Athena Parthenos was a secret weapon taking it to Athens was pretty tempting. Heck, Percy kind of liked the coach's idea of using it as a missile and sending Gaia up in a godly nuclear mushroom cloud. Unfortunately, God told him that Annabeth was right. The statue belonged back on Long Island, where it might have been able to stop the war between the two camps. So Rhianna takes the statue, Percy said, and we continue on to Athens. Leo shrugged. Cool with me, but a few pesky logistical problems. We got, 2 weeks until that Roman feast day when Gaia is supposed to rise. The Feast of Spes, Jason said. That's the 1st of August. Today is July 18th. Frank covered. So yeah, from tomorrow. Exactly 14 days. Hazel winced. It took us 18 days to get from Rome to here. A trip that should have only taken 2 or 3 days max. So give us our usual luck, Leo said. Maybe we have enough time to get to Iago too, to Athens. But the giants have stopped them from waking Gaia. Maybe, but how is Rhena supposed to get this massive statue back to Camp Half-Blood before the Greeks and Romans put each other through the blender? She doesn't even have her Pegasus anymore. Sorry. Fine, Rhena snapped. She might be treating them like allies rather than enemies. But Percy could tell Rhena still had not so soft spot for Leo. Probably because he'd blown up half the forum in New Rome. She took a deep breath. Unfortunately, Leo is corrected. I don't see how I can transport something so large. I was assuming. Well, I hope you all would have an answer. The labyrinth, Hazel said. I mean, if Faye really reopened it, I think she has. She looked at Percy offensively. Well, you said the labyrinth could take you anywhere, so maybe. No, Percy. No, Percy. No. Percy and Annabeth spoke in unusual. Not to shoot you down, Hazel, Percy said. It's just he struggled to find the right words. How could he describe the labyrinth to someone who'd never explored it? Daedalus had created it to be a living, growing maze. Over the centuries, it has spread like roots over a tree, under the entire surface of the world. Sure, it could take you anywhere. Distance inside was meaningless. You could enter the maze in New York, walk 10 feet, and exit the maze in Los Angeles. But only if you found a reliable way to navigate. Otherwise, the labyrinth would trick you and try and kill you at every turn. Where the tunnel network had collapsed after Daedalus died, Percy had been relieved. The idea of the maze regenerating itself, honeycombing its way under the earth, and again in private hiding, a spacious new home for monsters, that didn't make him happy. He had enough problems already. For one thing, he said, the passages in the labyrinths are way too small for the Athena Parthenus. There's no chance you could take it down there. And even if the maze is opening, Annabeth continued, we don't know what it might be like. It's dangerous enough before the Daedalus control, and he was an evil. If Faye had remade the labyrinth the way she wanted, she shook her head. Hazel, maybe your underground senses could guide Rhena through, but no one else would stand a chance. And we need you here. Besides, if you got lost down there, you're right, Hazel said gloomily. Never mind. Rhena cast her eyes around the group. Other ideas? I could go, Frank offered, not sounding very happy about it. If I'm Praetor, I should go. Maybe we could rig some sort of sled. Or no, Frank sang. Rhena gave him a weary smile. I hope we will work side by side in the future, but for now, your place is with the crew of the ship. You are one of the seven of the prophecy. I'm not, like I said. Everybody stopped. Everyone stopped eating. Percy stared across the circle at Nico, trying to decide if he was joking. Hazel set down her fork. Nico? I'll go with Rhena, he said. I can transport the statue with shadow travel. Percy raised his hand. I mean, I know you just got all 8 of us to the surface, and that was awesome, but a year ago you used to transporting yourself was dangerous and unpredictable. A couple of times you ended up in China, transporting a 40-foot statue halfway across the world. I've changed since I've came back. From Tartarus. Nico's eyes glittered with anger more intensely than Percy understood. He wondered if he'd done something to offend the guy. Nico, Jason intervened. We're not questioning. Excuse me again. So you don't. We're not questioning your power, but we just want to make sure you don't kill yourself trying. I can do it, he insisted. I'll make short jumps a few hundred miles each time. It's true, after each jump, I won't be in any shape to fend off monsters. I need Rhena to defend me on the statue. Raina had an excellent poker face. She studied the group, scanning their faces, but betraying none of her own thoughts. Any objections? No one spoke. Very well, he said, with the finality of judge. If she'd have gavel, Percy suspected, she would have bandaged it. I see no better option, but there will be many monster attacks. I would feel better taking a third person. That's the optimal number for a quest. Coach Hedge, Frank blurted. Percy stared at him, not sure if he'd heard correctly. What, Frank? The coach is the best choice, Frank said. The only choice. He's a good fighter. He's a certified protector. He'll get the job done. A fawn, Reno said. Satyr, barked the coach. And yeah, I'll go. Besides, when you get to Camp Half-Blood, you'll need somebody with connections and diplomatic skills to keep the Greeks from attacking you. Just let me go and make a call. Get my baseball bat. He got up and shot Frank an unspoken message that Percy couldn't quite read. Despite the fact that he'd been volunteered for a likely suicide mission, the coach looked grateful. He jogged off towards the ship's ladder, tapping his hooves together like an excited kid. Nico rose. I should go too, and rest before the first passage. We'll meet at the statue at sunset. Once he was gone, Hazel frowned. He's acting strangely. I'm not sure. I'm not sure he's thinking this through. He'll be okay, Jason said. I hope you're right. She passed her hand over the ground. Diamonds broke the surface. A glittering Milky Way of stones. We were at other crossroads. The Athena Parthenus goes west. The Argo 2 goes east. I hope we chose correctly. Percy wished he could say something encouraging, but he felt unsettled. Despite all they'd been through and all the battles they won, they seemed no closer to defeating Gaia. Wow, that's big stuff. Defeating Gaia. Sure, they realised Thanatos. They'd closed the doors. They'd closed the doors of death. At least now, they could kill monsters and make them stay into towers for a while. But the giants were back. All the giants. One thing bothers me, he said. Bothers him? He said, if the Feast of Speths is in 2 weeks and Gaia needs the blood of 2 demigods, wait, what did Clytius call it? The blood of Olympus. Then, aren't we doing exactly what Gaia wants, heading to Athens? If we don't go and she can't sacrifice any of us, doesn't that mean she can't wake up fully? Annabeth took his hand. He drank in the sight of her now. What they were back in the mortal world. Without the death mist, her blonde hair catching the sunlight, even she was still thin and wan like him, and her grey eyes were storming with thought. Percy, prophecies cut both ways, she said. If we don't go, we may lose our best and only chance to stop her. Athens is where our battle lies. We can't avoid it. Besides, trying to thwart prophecies never works. Gaia could capture us somewhere else or spill the blood of some other demigod. Yeah, you're right, Percy said. I don't like it, but you're right. The mood of the group became as gloomy as the Taurus' air, until Piper broke the tension. Well, she sheathed her blade and patted her cornucopia. Good picnic. Who wants dessert? Wow, final chapter of the book. Certainly going to finish it. I know it's been a long time. I'm even getting tired. It's 10 o'clock in the night. But let's carry on reading. Let's finish the book. Last chapter. Chapter 78. The last chapter of the book. Percy. At sunset, Percy found Nico tying ropes around the pedestal of Athena Parthenus. Thank you, Percy said. Nico frowned. For what? You promised to lead the others to the house of Hades, Percy said. You did it. Nico tied the end of the ropes together, making a halter. You got me out of that bronze jar and rove, saved my life yet again. It was the least I could do. His voice was steely guarded. Percy wished he could figure out what made this guy tick. But he'd never been able to. Nico was no longer the geeky kid. Nico was no longer the geeky kid. The geeky kid from Westover Hall with the magical cars. Nor he was the angry loner who followed the ghost of miners through the labyrinth. But who was he? Also, Percy said, you visited Bob. He told Nico about their trip to Tartarus. He figured if anyone could understand, Nico could. You convinced Bob that I could be trusted even though I never visited him. I never gave him a second thought. You probably saved our lives by being nice to him. Yeah, well, Nico said, not giving people a second thought. That can be dangerous. Dude, I'm trying to say thank you. Nico laughed without humour. I'm trying to say you don't need to. Now I need to finish this. If you can give me some space. Yeah, okay. Percy stepped back while Nico took up the slack on his ropes. He slipped them over his shoulders and as if the Athena Parthenos was a giant backpack. Percy couldn't help feeling a little hurt, being told to take a hike. Then again, Nico had been through a lot. The guy had survived into Tartarus on his own. Percy understood firsthand just how much strength that must have taken. Annabeth walked up the hill to join them. She took Percy's hand, which made him feel better. Good luck, she told Nico. Yeah, he didn't meet his eyes. You too. A minute later, Rena, Coach Hedge, arrived in full armour with packs over their shoulder. Rena looked grim and ready for combat. Coach Hedge grinned like he was expecting a surprise party. Rena gave Annabeth a hug. We will succeed, she promised. I know you will, Annabeth said. Coach Hedge shouldered his baseball bat. Yeah, don't worry, I'm going to get to camp and see my baby, I'm going to get this baby to camp. He patted his leg on the Athena Parthenos. All right, Nico said. Grab the ropes, please. Here we go. Rena and Kedge took hold. The air darkened. The Athena Parthenos collapsed into its own shadow and disappeared, along with its 3 escorts. The Argo too sailed after nightfall. They veered southwest until they reached the coast, then splashed down in the Ionian Sea. Percy was relieved to see the waves beneath him again. It would have been a shorter trip to Athens overland, but after the cruise experience with the mountain spirits in Italy, they decided not to fly over Gaia's territory any more than they had to. They would sail around the Greek mainland, following the routes that the Greek heroes had taken in ancient times. That was fine with Percy. He loved being back in his father's element, with the fresh sea airs in his lungs. As the salty spray on his arms, he stood at the starboard rail and closed his eyes, sensing the currents beneath them. But images of Tartarus kept burning in his mind. The river Phlegethon, the blistered ground where the monsters regenerated, the dark forest where the air circled overhead in the blood-misty clouds. Most of all, he thought about a hut in the swamp with a warm fire and racks of dry herbs and Drake and jerky. He wondered if that hut was empty now. Amber pressed next to him and at the rail, her warmth measuring. Time for the semi-final page of the book. I know, she murmured. Reading his expression, I can't get that place out of my head either. Damison, Percy said. And Bob. I know, her voice was fragile. We have to make their sacrifice worth it. We have to beat Gaia. Percy stared into the night sky. He wished they were looking at it from the beach on Long Island, rather than from halfway around the world, sailing towards almost certain death. He wondered where Nico, Rena, and Hedge were now. how long it would take them to make it back, assuming they survived. He imagined the Romans drawing up battle lines right now, encircling Camp Half-Blood. 14 days to reach Athens. Then one way or another, the war would be decided. Over in the boat, Leo whistled happily. As he tinkled with Festus, his mechanical brain muttering something about a crystal and astrolabe. Amidships, Piper and Hazel practiced their swordplay. Gold and bronze blades ringing in the night. Jason and Frank stood at their helm, talking in low tones, maybe telling stories of the Legion, or sharing thoughts, or being praetor. "We've got a good crew," Percy said. "If I have to sail to my death, you're not dying on me, seaweed brain." Annabeth said, "Remember, never separate again. And after we get home..." "What?" Percy said. "What?" Percy said. She kissed him. "Ask me again, once we defeat Gaia." Final page. And last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines of the book. He smiled happily to have something to look forward to. "Whatever you say." As they sailed further from the coast, the sky darkened and more stars came out. Percy studied the constellations, the one that Annabeth had taught him so many years ago. "Bob says hello," he told the stars. "Diago too sailed in the night." The end of the book. That's my time ended reading this book to you. Hope you liked all my videos on the House of Hades, about 55. Don't forget to watch all my about 60 something videos, okay? I'm only just 8, but just please, they're lovely. They've got some songs, not just the House of Hades. Don't forget, please subscribe to all my videos.